I call the Honourable Member Claire Curran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I get into the other issues that we're raising today with relation to this bill and the amendments that we are putting up, I would ask again the Minister to clarify, while he has around the deed that's going to be undertaken with between Chorus 2 and the Crown around the ownership issues, to specifically address where the requirements are going to be placed for the other important parts of the Kiwi share, and to do with the emergency calling services and the standard rentals and the free calling aspect of it, and to reassure the public that taking it out of the Act is not going to water it down. Labor has today introduced a number of other amendments to this bill and to the supplementary order paper, which we hope would go some way to addressing the deep flaws that underpin it and seek the support of other parties in the House on these issues, and know that these are issues that were raised by submitters over and over again during the deeply flawed process that the Select Committee underwent, with a very truncated process which gave the submitters a very short amount of time to process the extraordinarily enormous amount of information that was being put before them in the original supplementary order paper around the structural separation of telecom, and enabled and meant that they that their ability to actually have their cases heard and be taken seriously was diminished. The deal with Telecom, which has subsequently been announced, despite the very large supplementary order paper that essentially dealt with the structural separation of telecom, which is for around that 70% of homes in that 75% coverage area, is conditional on the passage of this bill and Telecom shareholder approval. The two major issues that remain, now that the regulatory holiday issue has been removed, is around that structural separation of telecom retail from Chorus, with those various sharing arrangements, and the reintegration of telecom wholesale into Chorus. And there is still as yet no knowledge of where that separation will really occur and what that end point will look like for those two entities, and to what extent that new Chorus organisation will have a monopoly and the ability to price gouge down the track. And that is one of the major issues that needs to be addressed. And we have a number of amendments around that today that go to that issue around where the separation occurs, the consultation involved that needs to occur around that process, and whether or not any operational separation functions should still remain between the wholesale part of telecom and the Chorus entity, to ensure that there is true open access that can occur in the future. The other main issue is around the averaging of the copper pricing, the unbundled copper pricing, which is going to push up the price, and we have heard a number of submissions on this issue in the Select Committee, as the Minister well knows, which he just dismissed out of hand, which will push up the price in the urban areas where it's actually used of copper. And what that means is that, for the people listening, is that the broadband that you're getting now is going to go up in price. And you're going to have to wait until possibly
I'm not going to have to
the people listening.
Point of order, the Honourable Member Amy Adams.
Mr Chairman, I've been listening for some time for the member on her feet to get to part one, which is the telecom service obligations, and she has spoken at some length about structural separation and the Crown's investment structure, none of which are included in part one, sir, and I'd ask that she be brought back to part one, which is what we're debating.
Speaking to the point of order.
I was listening very carefully, and the member was speaking to exactly that, and the Kiwi share, which goes right to that question.
Thank you very much.
Yes, it does.
Can the member just continue?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr Chair. Apologies for bringing yourself into the debate. The point I was making is that the people of New Zealand will... Mr Chair.
Yes, I can call the honourable member. Claire Curran.
Mr Chair, that the people of New Zealand who are receiving broadband services now are going to find that their existing copper services are going to go up in price while they're waiting for fibre. And many of the people of New Zealand in their homes are not going to receive that fibre until possibly as early as 2019, and then there is no guarantee that they're going to get it then. And that is the big con that lies at the heart of this bill, that they're not the vast majority of New Zealanders, there is no guarantee when they're going to get fibre, and in the meantime their costs can go up. So these and the point of this, Mr Chair, in relation to part one of the bill and the issues that surround the Kiwi share provision are that there are still a vast number of questions that lie behind this bill. There's an enormous lack of consultation with the public and explanation around many of these issues. How can it be that the Minister can introduce such an important component into the SOP at the very last minute around removing all reference to the Kiwi share and not provide the ability for the public to have a public discussion about it, for there to be public submissions on the issue, so that the public can be reassured that those important obligations will be maintained. So there's a number of other issues that will be contained in our amendments today. They go to the contractual arrangement with Telecom that replaces the regulatory forbearance period, and the enormous potential risk to the Crown that places on it. Again, an amendment that was introduced after the bill that came back to the House with no public consultation and no ability for there to be submissions on it and no ability for there to be analysis. And the Minister himself has acknowledged publicly and certainly in the Select Committee and in this House that there was no analysis done on it. It was just a trust me, I know what I'm doing, which is what he says to all criticism of himself. We have another amendment around the liability on breaches with the bill, and further, as you will see, that we're going to be discussing. I, Mr Chair, would be keen for the Minister to provide the public of New Zealand with more reassurance around those important issues around the Kiwi share. I think it's extremely important that the issues around consultation to do with the structural separation of telecom need to be addressed, the role of the Commerce Commission, the arrangements and how the Commerce Commission is going to be able to intervene if necessary on pricing and other matters, the arrangements around the split between Chorus and Telecom Wholesale, and the integration of how Telecom Chorus and Wholesale and Chorus will work in the short term. There are a number of other issues, as the Minister well knows, around the equivalence of inputs and the essential issues around open access and whether or not there will truly be able to be competition that happens at the retail level in order to provide the people of New Zealand with a truly competitive and affordable broadband service. And then there is the vexed issue of affordability and those what will happen to the copper prices in the meantime, and when the people of New Zealand in their homes are actually going to be able to receive fibre broadband. That fibre broadband that was promised to them by this government before the last election by the Prime Minister as number 2 in his pledge, which was an undeliverable promise with the amount of money that was attached to it, and that what this government and what this minister has tried to do.
I call the Honourable